those candidates, they're probably proactively out there looking for jobs, and they're going to be comparing your company to other companies. But let's not be narrow-minded and think they're only comparing your company to other non-emergency companies.
I'm Bambi CEO Nirav Chheda, and I am here with the co-founder of CareerDriver, Jodie Lethgo. Jodie, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me today, Nirav. Happy to be here with you talking about one of the issues that I hear seems to plague a lot of our clients in the industry. We're going to be talking about driver recruiting today. We'll probably touch on driver retention a bit today as well. If you're not familiar with CareerDriver, CareerDriver is a driver recruiting agency. We work in the non-emergency space as well as a few other sectors. We also work in taxi. So if anyone's got taxi, we can help out there. We work with limo and with motor coach and delivery as well. But we are in the business of placing drivers. We do everything from the driver lead generation all the way through vetting and screening, interviewing, coordinating interviews, and getting them in the driver's seat. So all the way through.
Thanks, Jodie. And I'm especially excited about this talk today because at Bambi, we have customers across the country who run non-emergency medical transportation businesses. And the number one consistent thing we hear across NEMT companies across the country is it's hard to hire drivers. It's hard to keep drivers. And this is exactly what you help NEMT businesses do. And I met you at the NEMT conference where you gave a really good talk about all of the best tips and practices that NEMT companies can actually do on a regular basis to make sure that whenever they need to hire, they're best positioned to do so. And, they continue to do things to keep those drivers retained, which is probably overlooked. So, without further ado, I'd love for you to share, the story first of this and how you started CareerDriver and even got into doing this.
Yeah. So thank you, first off, for giving me all that credit for all those great and wonderful ideas, but I can't take credit for everything that I share. My background is actually in the trucking industry. So for anyone who's familiar with what's been happening in the trucking industry over the last 2 or 3 decades, they've had a severe shortage of truck drivers. Understandably so. It's not the most appealing job to be working over the road, away from your family, living out of a tiny truck. So the industry itself has had to adapt. They've adapted and come up with some very creative ways and some very advanced ways of just working through and streamlining their driver recruiting. And they take driver retention very seriously as well. So they do a lot and employ a lot of tactics to try to keep drivers happy. And that's where we pulled a lot of our learnings from. My background is actually in marketing and then in trucking. So right out of college, I ended up working for Caesars Entertainment in their marketing department. So got a taste of marketing there, and just through working in the casino industry, met a lot of really cool, great people, and ended up going to work for one of those cool, wonderful people. So I worked in the trucking industry for close to 8 years with those folks that I had met there, this couple that owned a trucking company, a logistics company, a limousine company, an equipment leasing company, and a Class A CDL training facility. So they were in a little bit of everything in the transportation world. And in total, they had about 150 trucks out over the road. They had anywhere between 50 and 100 vehicles in the chauffeur fleet out at any given time. And they had a little over 1,000 trailers we'd be tracking all over the country between all the logistics things we had going on. So a lot of exposure to every area of transportation. And in that time, I worked in all of the areas of the business. I was exposed to everything from all of the tactics in recruiting and what made recruiting in the trucking industry so unique. I had been exposed to recruiting through the casino industry with Caesars, but it was just completely different. It was absolutely just completely flipped on its head in the trucking industry. So we deployed those same tactics in recruiting on the limousine side as well, which is where my co-founder, Simon Curtis, comes from, is from the marketing side in the limo industry and taxi industry. So we put our heads together and we were like, hey, you're really great at digital marketing, generating driver leads, and I've got experience in doing recruiting and all of the tactics to get folks in the pipeline through recruiting. And we put our heads together and CareerDriver was born. So we've been in business now for about as long as Bambi's been in business. So we're still in our infancy, but we are around 50 clients now. We offer packages all the way from just generating leads to getting a bit more involved in helping with the interviews, all the way to the full end-to-end recruiting process where we are running MBRs, we're sending people for drug screens, we're even running people through training programs to get them onboarded with some of the brokers in the NEMT space. So we do a little bit of everything. We tailor our packages to what our clients really need. So yeah, that's the, I guess, short story there of how CareerDriver came to be.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It seems like with your background in Simon's, you guys are the dream team for helping transport companies find drivers. There's nobody who has the better set of experiences and background to do this. So you've been doing this for as long as Bambi's been around, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
You've racked up a pretty impressive, not only number, but type of clients. And I know several of them. And, you work with some of the most prominent non-emergency medical transport companies in the country. Can you tell me a bit about this? So, you help all kinds of transport companies find drivers, whether it be trucking, taxi, NEMT. What do you sort of find as, the key differences, if any, with non-emergency medical transport versus the other transport industries you work in?
Yeah, so in the chauffeur space in particular, it's more so focused on customer service. In fact, I hear all the time from those clients, I always ask, what background do you see people converting over from that work out well? And they're always like, hospitality. We love hotel workers. We love people who have worked for tips in the past because they have a different level of customer service. Now, in the non-emergency side, we're looking for very caring people who are passionate, they are caring and patient people. So that one, we're screening more for soft skills rather than your job history when it comes to the non-emergency side. Now, across the board, driving record is a big thing. Drug screens, that's a big thing. That's a real hot topic, especially as weed becomes legalized in marijuana in many states. So that's always something we're screening for, as well as your criminal background. But that really big differentiating factor for us is those folks in the chauffeur space and even in the motor coach space have to have a different level of customer service background than what we're seeing in the non-emergency space.
Thanks for sharing. And, one thing that I want to dive into about what CareerDriver does for NEMT companies and one of the sort of lessons that you instill, and you made a big point about this at your NEMTAC talk, is that hiring is an always on thing. Even if you don't need drivers right now, you still have to be doing the hiring practices. And I would just love for you to share about why that's so important to have this always on mindset in terms of hiring.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that's a really great point. And that really goes down to your company branding and your culture and just putting on your outward image to the world. In today's day and age, everybody has access to the internet right at their fingertips. you have access to so much. When I first applied to my very first job with Caesars, there wasn't a whole lot online you could find about them. In fact, I had to go in and fill out an actual written application and go do an interview in person. Whereas today it's, oh, let me send you a link. But then these people are going to go and they're going to go Google your company. They're going to go look at your Facebook. They're going to look at your Glassdoor reviews. They're going to want to see what you're doing at your company. They want to see what your company culture looks like. And the thing that I always remind everybody across every sector that I work in, the people that we are recruiting, those candidates, they're probably proactively out there looking for jobs. And they're going to be comparing your company to other companies. But let's not be narrow-minded and think they're only comparing your company to other non-emergency companies. The truth is most of the people that we're placing, they've come from entry-level jobs. They're being wooed by Amazon. Walmart might be trying to hire them. McDonald's could be hiring them. And you better believe that Amazon's got a call center of people that are going to be talking to those people immediately and be coaxing them. And if you go look at an Amazon social media, Walmart, they're these big mega companies, but we have an advantage there where we can really play on. We're homegrown, we're family businesses. And in fact, that's one of the big things that our clients love to talk about when I onboard them. We do a deep dive of all of our clients and we ask them, what's so great, unique, and wonderful about working for your company? How can we as marketeers, make your company appealing? And they're always like, we're family owned and operated. Like everybody, in the office is like family. And I'm like, that's amazing. I love that. But let's do more to portray that. Like, how can you as a company, put that image out there online? So when people are looking at, John Smith's NEMT company versus going to work driving for Amazon or going to work for some other mega company here in Louisville, I always use the example of UPS. You can go through packages at UPS. Like, why should I go work for these family-owned businesses? And those businesses are the ones telling me that's why you should come work for us. And it's just as simple as on your social media pages, share the things that you're doing. A lot of these companies do a lot in the community, around the holidays especially. They're out there doing different things with charities and just putting themselves out there in the community. Showcase that stuff. Get your employees involved in that stuff so we can showcase those employees doing things in the community. We've got some clients that do some really cool things. We have a client in New York. There's a JFK 5K where they actually run the runway at JFK. And they went out there, the company went out there and they sponsored some of their chauffeurs to run in this. And they were at the finish line taking photos and it made their social media. But it's just little things like that. But you don't have to go, sponsor someone running a 5K on an airport runway. It could be just employee spotlight or, hey, here's our team that's backing all of our drivers, our great and wonderful evening dispatch team, and do driver spotlights. Talk about the drivers that are doing things. And testimonials are one of the best things you can get from your current employees. Use that on social media, like longtime driver, and here's what he has to say. Put just a sentence or two, a quote about what he likes about the company. A driver saying that this is a family business versus the owner saying, I run a family business, goes a long way. But it's not just your social media channels. There's other ways you can portray that. A lot of companies that we talk to don't even have a hiring page on their website. We build websites, we come up with all the different pages we're going to have, and we run into so many companies that don't even have a landing page where you can go to find out about the jobs that they're currently hiring for. There's not a link to an application. There's no testimonials. There's no photos about why you should work for us or benefits. But those are all things that you can easily do. Just creating an employer landing page, showcasing some of your employees, giving some quotes, giving your company benefits, all about driving for your company, and then link them to the application. And as you're doing those posts on social media, you can always utilize that landing page as a tool to drive traffic back to that landing page. So as people come across these posts, they're seeing all these great and wonderful things, they can click and follow through and get to an application. So yeah, I think I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there, Nirav, but
No, not at all. I mean, I was just about to say, like, what all you're saying, like, this is not to be underestimated at all. Like, this is the critical thing that every single NEMT company needs to be doing all the time. And like you mentioned at the beginning, we were going to talk about not only driver hiring, but driver retention. And this is a pretty important.
This plays right into it. Yeah,
right? Do
absolutely.
you want to talk about retention a bit?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about retention a little bit. Yeah. And so, the thing is, we work, again, across all of these sectors, and I hear things from all of the companies we work with that they're doing to help retain their drivers, and they can all be applied across the board. And I do apologize because my cat just jumped in my lap and he meowed. So you might have to edit out my cat meowing.
I might not do that.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. He's got a Christmas bow tie on, so if he makes an appearance, it'll be very festive. His name's Catrick Swayze, and he thinks he just needs to always be involved in my Zoom calls. So apologies for that. It's always a distraction. But utilizing your social media channels goes a long way for your retention. And, showcasing drivers, that costs you nothing to do, to showcase drivers. And that makes them feel pride in what they do. And it shows that you care. But, there's a lot of things that companies can be doing to aid in retention. There's not like a one size fits all for everyone. And I do think it is very tailored to the culture of the company. And it's forming the culture ultimately that does drive retention. It's just creating an environment where people are vested in staying. They believe in the company and they believe in what they're doing. And we do try very hard to find people who are compassionate about what they're doing here. It is a job where you get to help people. So we do try to find people that are caring and kind and fit the scope of this role, but that doesn't, retain somebody if they're unhappy with the culture of the company. So working on your culture is really the biggest driver of retention, and building a culture that comes from the top. So, those owners that we're talking to that are talking about the family-oriented business, a lot of them, they truly do have a family-oriented business, but it's just ensuring that all the way down, everybody feels like they are part of that company's family. And some of the things that we hear that make these companies feel more family-like is support forums. So, just WhatsApp groups or text chains where everybody is involved in it and I'm sorry, I'm going to kick him off the counter. The blur is killing me because he keeps like popping in and out. And I do apologize up front for you having to do a little extra editing. I actually gave him
no, not at all. I won't edit any of this out. Catrick Swayze is killing it here.
But a lot of the companies that we work with, they're just missing a few little things as far as making that outreach so that everybody does feel like part of their family. And some of the things I've seen that drivers tend to really like are those support groups. So we've got some companies that have just a group chat or a group WhatsApp. We've got a client that does coffee mornings. They just bring coffee in, and because all the drivers are starting around the same time, and you can just come in and chat with any of the owners, directors, managers, and they are just going to hand free coffee out to the drivers. So they do some various things, such as I've heard one client that does a card night. So it just happened on accident. The owner stayed after on a Friday evening and was playing cards with some of the drivers, and it came to be an expectation. So it's just a weekend thing. After people park their cars, they'll stay off the clock and hang out together and play cards. But that's company culture. It's creating an environment that's unique to your company. And that comes from top down and from other management within the company.
Yeah. I mean, this is all fundamental and really important stuff, which is basically make your company an attractive place to actually work, and then make your company look like an attractive place to work by putting it out, on the internet, which it already is an attractive place because you actually made it like that, but you also have to capture that so that new drivers see that. So Jodie, can you do this for me? Paint me a picture of the ideal scenario that an NEMT company, goes through, like the ideal process. Let's say there's a company that has 6 vehicles and 6 drivers, business is expanding, they're getting a 7th vehicle, they need to hire that 7th driver, right? They paint a good picture of what the company culture is like by putting on social media and the internet about, nice things about the company. And now they have to actually bring in job candidates and fill that role. What is the process? Like, how would it ideally go?
Yes. So first you got to start by getting leads. So you need to have leads in your funnel. So it's a funnel is what it is. You've got all these leads at the top of the funnel, and then you start vetting through those leads. And that funnel, you get down to the smaller parts of the funnel as you're vetting leads through the funnel. And ultimately at the end, popping out at the end of the funnel are going to be those folks that you end up hiring. But that's how we think of it, is as a funnel. And to get those leads into the top of that funnel there, you've got to have some lead generation sources. So most people are very familiar with Indeed. They're very familiar with ZipRecruiter, with Monster. Those are all means of getting leads into the top of your funnel. Now, I will say those folks are very proactively looking for jobs. So when you put your company out there on a job board, just bear in mind, we do treat those a bit differently than some of the other sources we use, because those candidates are applying to multiple jobs. I can't tell you how many times my recruiters have gotten on the phone, and for anyone listening to this who calls, is the first line of defense calling those people, which job is this again? Or they're getting their facts mixed up from other jobs they've applied to. So it's very obvious these folks are mass applying to multiple jobs when you're working on job boards. That's why we come up with diverse channels where we generate our leads. Now, our biggest source of leads is through social media. Social media allows us to be a lot more targeted with our leads. For any client that I've onboarded, I always ask them, what's your ideal driver? And then I'll start asking some questions about what background did they come from? What jobs would these people be working? What age range? What area are they living in? Because we can be a lot more targeted on social media with who we're going after. So we'll create a driver profile to help us target those folks. And we are the ones being proactive in that instance. So we're looking for chauffeurs, probably the easiest example I can give you guys is hospitality. So, we're going to be targeting people who tend to work in the hospitality sector. For non-emergency, depending on the company, we're going to be looking for people who might have some experience doing some home care, might have some experience doing some hospitality work as well, because they're trained in how to talk to people, or they're accustomed to working very closely with people to try to vet out people using the soft skills. But just continuing off that discussion about lead generation sources, we're proactively targeting people on the driver profiles we're creating, and we're presenting them with a job opportunity. It's like, hey, you weren't necessarily looking for a job, but you meet our profile and our criteria. So we're targeting you. And if our ad is catchy enough to catch their eye, then we'll present them. Then they'll put their information in, and that's another lead in our pipeline. So we have various means of getting leads into the top of the funnel, including job boards, social media. Now, I always recommend to companies, word of mouth and referral. That's a way of getting leads into the top of your funnel. Absolutely. So if you've got a fleet of drivers, tap into those people, and that costs a company next to nothing. Now, I do recommend doing some type of referral bonus, but to go prepay for some leads, it doesn't cost anything. And then just working your way through that funnel, So, we got all these leads popping into the funnel here. Start working your way through them. You're going to call them and you're going to start vetting them. Most of our criteria, our hard criteria, is going to be dictated by the insurance company. There's going to be an age minimum. There's going to be some limitations on your driving record. If you've got a DUI, you're probably not going to be eligible for any kind of driving job. There's going to be limitations on your background. We always have to screen candidates on the background. And of course, they have to be able to pass a drug screen. So the first time you're having these conversations, you're selling the job to them, but you're also screening them. So it is a long conversation at that first go round on the phone with them. And my recruiters typically have a call handle time for the first calls, 10 to 15 minutes, just to get the first time screening out the way. And then we can start to dig into those deeper details that are required on an application for a driving job. But we do that initial screening to get people down even further into the funnel. Then you get them to the point where you're actually running MVRs. You're getting more narrow in your funnel. You start running backgrounds. We're getting a bit more narrow. And then the drug screens are always a big fallout for us. And so what ends up coming out at the end of that funnel, that's where you end up getting your hires. Now, I know you're probably a very technical guy just based on what you do. So you're probably thinking, okay, so how many leads to get how many, folks pop out at the end of your funnel? Well, it really depends on your area. It really depends on your sources of leads. And I can't confidently say if I go into a market just looking at, what we've done everywhere else, I can't say, okay, I know for sure Facebook and Indeed is going to be the way to go here, because it doesn't work that way in any market. In fact, it fluctuates quite a bit, which is why Simon is, the other half of this business. Him and his digital marketing team of gurus are such a big part of our business. They're working diligently behind the scenes to reallocate ad budget, to analyze where our leads are coming from and ensure that we're putting our ad spend in the right places. And it does change. It does fluctuate quite a bit. We've had some clients that have been with us now for a little over a year. And, the channels, when we opened up the contract that we're working to get the right leads in the funnel, are not the channels we're using today. And the ads we were using when we kicked off those accounts are not the ads we're using today. It is an endless cycle of just monitoring where your successful leads are coming from. But for those of you that are listening to this podcast, you don't need a team of digital marketing gurus. It's as simple as saying, where am I putting my ad budget? And then monitoring where your hires are actually coming from, and then moving your ad spend to that source. Now, I know Indeed's probably always the easiest place to start. So I do recommend for anyone who's not doing any kind of hiring right now to always start with Indeed. It's the easiest place to go. And you'll probably get some success immediately, but that ends up trickling off. And after that, you will have to source some other areas for leads. And, I've even heard Craigslist working. I'm not a big advocate for it, but I'll give it a try in some of our more difficult markets. But it's just trial and error, and just always continuously monitoring where those leads are coming from.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So Jodie, let me ask you this. There are plenty of NEMT companies out there who, they see what you're saying. They think, hey, she's making a lot of sense. I believe that, these probably are the things that I need to do in order to improve my driver hiring and retention. But, I'm not an expert in social media. I've never done this stuff. I don't know how to do this stuff. Like, is the juice really worth the squeeze for me trying to figure this out? Like, maybe I just have experts like Jodie and CareerDriver do this for me. Like, can you share a story about one of your NEMT clients who might sort of fit that sort of bill, and how you've taken them from here to here?
Well, I'll say we wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for those folks. So that's a great point that you bring up. But yeah, we do have one in particular that comes to my mind. They had a team of folks that were supposed to be driver managers. They had multiple locations, and these driver managers were having to take the time to call and vet drivers as well. And as I was saying to you, those folks at the top of the funnel, to screen all of those folks, that's very time consuming. And what we see happen with not just this particular company, but a lot of companies, is the people that are supposed to be making those calls, they're also dispatching drivers. They're also putting out fires, not literal fires, you know what I mean? They're working on the day-to-day of the business to keep the wheels turning. And they often, it falls on the back burner because it's not the urgent, immediate thing that's right in front of them. You know, you've got drivers that need to go out. You've got clients that need to be picked up. This list of leads that's coming in is going to have to wait. And that's where we see the need for some additional support. And what we were seeing happening was this client was paying for services through Indeed, and nobody was able to get around to those leads. And when they did, 48 hours later, 72 hours later, sometimes 2 weeks later, these people had already found a job. So you're paying for a service to provide leads, but not at the fault of that employee, but just kind of the nature of the beast. And we've seen this so many times, the leads just go unattended to. And ultimately, I even tell our clients who want to buy leads off of us, it's going to fail if you don't have someone who can pick up the phone and call that lead in under 12 hours. Like, that is our absolute longest a lead will sit, is 12 hours. Our recruiters get to them under 12 hours. We've got a crew that works over the weekend to make sure that leads aren't sitting, because we know that, Amazon might be calling them already. McDonald's could be calling them. Anybody they've applied to is going to be calling them and trying to get them to apply for their job. So back to this company that we were working for, they were not seeing any success. And so their story was, well, we spend thousands of dollars on Indeed and it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, hold up. It doesn't work. Let's take a peek. Well, there's thousands of leads in there. So explain to me what doesn't work for you. So, services like Indeed are great, but they don't go beyond the vetting of, it's like, we'll present you leads that are interested in your job, but we're not going to vet them for you. We're not going to line up interviews for you. We're not going to take it beyond that. So when we came into play, we just started lining up interviews for them, and we completely removed the aspect of them having to work through the top of the funnel, and they were only brought in at this part of the funnel. So, we were going through all the leads at the top of the funnel, vetting out any that on that first verbal interview didn't fit, and then, saying, okay, we're going to line you up for an interview now, and they would pick it up. They were picking it up from that interview and moving them through the rest of the funnel. So we took out the biggest barrier for them, and they were able to expedite the process. And it took a real burden off of those dispatchers that were expected to also be, hiring in this instance.
That resonates a lot. I mean, I've talked with hundreds of NEMT companies across the country, and what you just said, like, I've heard this story too many times.
Yeah.
Jodie, I'm sold. I think probably a lot of the audience is sold. I'm going to leave your contact info and CareerDriver's contact info in the description here.
Yes, please.
Are there any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, actually, thank you for giving me the platform for this. Yeah, when I meet with clients, a lot of times they're just like, well, I don't want to really pay for the services. Like, I do need the drivers, but we'll continue to muddle our way through. And, that's fine. But the thing that I just always like to push back on is, how much does it cost for that vehicle to sit there? And not just the cost of whatever you're paying to lease it or to, pay your monthly payment on it. It's got insurance on it as well. But let's also think about the lost revenue. That vehicle could be moving. How much money are you losing? How many trips have you turned down? So that's always what I like to point out to people is, if you're going to let that vehicle sit because you're going to wait 6 weeks to hire someone when I can do it in 6 days, just do some quick calculations there and tell me how much you're going to end up losing. So just,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Exactly. Thanks for sharing. I mean, some of the leading NEMT companies in the country, who I personally know, have seen a big ROI from CareerDriver and your guys' help. So I'm sure a lot of other NEMT companies are going to increasingly see that ROI. Again, I'm leaving your contact info and CareerDriver's contact info
Appreciate
in the
it.
description. Jodie,
Yeah.
thanks so much for your time.
Run, Bambi, run.
Awesome. Thanks, Jodie.